My name is John Sears. I currently am the vice president of Gregory and basically the general manager of the North America business with some global oversight for the brand in our other regions. We sell in about 45 countries. I think some of you are probably familiar with the brand, maybe some more so than others, but Gregory makes premium outdoor equipment, gear carry, gear storage, primarily backpacks for hiking, backpacking, skiing. And we were founded back in '77, so we've been around quite a while. But I'll just give you a brief background on myself so you can kind of have some context. I got a ID degree from Georgia Tech, graduated back in 2001, and I went to go work for Motorola. My old man was an executive at Motorola, and so he got me some cush job in their design department. And I quickly discovered really wasn't for me in terms of designing phones and radios, and I didn't enjoy the research as much. So I decided to make a choice and combine passion with play and get into the outdoor space. So I applied for a few different jobs on the West Coast. Ended up getting a junior design job at Gregory, and moved out to California and mentored underneath the founder of the company, Wayne Gregory, there for a number of years. So, to kind of start out, I guess, that was, for me, I had some soft goods experience in college, but maybe nothing like what you guys have the opportunity in your time ahead to get involved in if you like it. I think soft goods and hard goods are definitely different. However, backpacks kind of, in our world, it is a niche world to some extent, but it's kind of a combination of hard goods and soft goods, but more soft goods focused because we do build suspension systems and have to deal with, injection molding and kind of the hard parts integration. So we're on the apparel side, you're kind of pure soft goods. And on like the Skull Candy side, for example, you're fairly pure hard goods. We kind of run the boundary in between where you got to deal with load carriage and also the soft goods textile side of things. So to kind of give you, kind of what Chase is asking for is a little bit of the life in the eyes of an industrial designer in the soft goods space. So I can jump ahead a bunch of years, but, just for, I guess, some macro context, I was a designer for, probably 5 or 6 years, and then worked into a design management position with no direct reports, but with some oversight over the design. And then I worked to a senior design position, which typically, might include either direct leadership of the whole design department or potentially some direct design reports, and then into global design management, and then into operations, and then into more of a general management role where I'm managing operations, marketing, finance, the P&L, as well as product creation, engineering, and sourcing. So, Gregory's not a huge company. We're only 15 people here in the Utah office, but we have offices in Japan, Belgium, Hong Kong, and Latin America. So so as far as industrial design goes, and soft goods, the way that Gregory is structured now, every company is a little bit unique. You'll find that in terms of structure and how they define product line management, and whether or not they run a designer and developer team, or some companies will run just designers that do the development work as well. But there's 3 great career paths when it comes to design, development, and product line management, and those kind of each require a little bit different skill set and different experience. And generally speaking, they have some commonalities in all companies. So I don't want to be the master of the obvious, but the designer obviously is in charge of product creation in our world, and ideation and identifying trends as well. But they do that in partnership with the product line manager. And the product line manager in our world acts as the bridge between product development and creation and R&D and marketing. So that's kind of the way I talk about our product line management setup. They really run kind of end to end. So they begin with, identifying trends in the marketplace in concert with designers at the front end of the process, and create the product briefs, which, each company handles a little bit differently, but I think it's a very important part of the process that carries over directly from your experience in school. And then all the way to the back end, they kind of manage some of the costing along the way, make sure that that person, the product line manager, will kind of be in tune with the customer in terms of the reality of product creation is you can't have everything you want all the time. And, we end up having to make some tough decisions about features and benefits versus, cost and commercial price points. And so the product line manager will be the one to make those hard decisions when it comes time to finalize the product. And then the product line manager also, as the person that, understands the product and is kind of the spiritual center of the product, they also act as that bridge to marketing to ensure the true features and benefits are communicated in the marketing collateral. And they kind of do that final pass off to marketing before we start to communicate to our, to our customers first, and then to our, end consumers. So you'll find the models change quite a bit between companies that are wholesale based, like a Gregory, that sell to REI, versus companies there's so many more companies now that are just pure direct to consumer. And so those timelines are quite different in terms of how you go to market. And, obviously in a direct to consumer business, you can shorten those lead times, go directly to market as soon as the product's ready. Whereas in the wholesale world, which most outdoor companies are structured as now, you tend to have to launch products, 8 months, 7-8 months to your customers before they buy them, commit to the following year, and ultimately launch the product, 8 months after it gets shown to key retailers. So the timelines are a lot more stretched out, and that has an impact on the product creation process. But and Chase, or Andrew, feel free to jump in here if you find it something you want to dive down in. It's 40 minutes of one-way conversations. I don't want to not provide the best value to you guys, so just jump in anytime. So soft goods wise on our side, the product brief creation process, that's always a really challenging one for all companies, and you'll find that that timeline gets compressed quite a bit, and there's a lot of pressure on that in the real design world. And I think you might the best thing you can do is try to get an internship at a company for sure, so you can see that really happening. But there is a lot of really applicable things that you learn in school about defining design objectives and problems in that early stage of a design brief. I think are really valuable. What we all kind of have to realize as creatives too is we work best. We really do work best in a constraint box, and that's where creativity thrives. So you tend to want to build a really smart constraint box around a product brief in the real world. That constraint box includes price points and really making sure you're defining that target consumer. But that's fairly obvious. But expect that to happen, and expect, I think, in school as you move forward. And I'm not sure how many of you will take which path, but as a designer or a developer, I think it's really important to kind of embrace that process and find the right time and place to be fully blue sky. Creativity always tapers down. It always starts here and ends here. So it is important to start in a blue sky mind space, but understand that finding the balance between a commercial product. When I say commercial, I mean something that hits the right price point, and has the right level of innovation, super important. And a lot of that comes down on the soft goods side to being clever about the way you do things and not just spending a bunch of money. Yeah, Andrew?
Yeah, so I was going to say, a lot of designers out there, they'll feel like their creativity or their creative freedom gets trampled by a design brief. Because some brands will have a very constrained or very pointed design brief, where others it's a little more open. Just from your personal experience, how do you at Gregory, I guess, how to what level do you constrain some of your design briefs? And from being a designer, how did you handle either really open ones or really narrowly focused ones?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on you know, obviously it depends on the type of project. For Gregory, when we identify, it's really important in design to never find a solution and then, or to have it to come up with a solution in your mind, create creatively, and then try to find the problem that you're solving. That's like kind of a classic mistake that leads to failed product. We're all creative, so it's hard. We come up with these ideas, and we're like, "Oh, I had this idea." We get locked into it, and then we go and try to find the problem we're solving versus the other way around. So to answer your question for Gregory, when we see a problem in the marketplace or a white space, that's when things can be very blue sky for us, and the brief tends to stay very wide open for a period of time. And then what we do is, you kind of step down one level and say, okay, we think we've identified and focused in on some of these problems, and now the brief needs to be created so we can pick a direction and go. Because even in the real design world, oftentimes it's not a linear process, product creation, and so you tend to come up with ideas midstream that might totally change the way you're approaching the project, which is always a challenge. But sometimes you have to just stick to the timeline. So as a designer, with derivative projects that were much more constrained, when I first got into the industry, um, those were comforting in a way. But as I got more confident, in my product creation capabilities, they got frustrating. But then I came full circle and realized these things are super necessary for the business, and you really want to bring value to a company by understanding when you want to reinvent the wheel and when you don't. So a lot of times what will happen as a designer is I'll want to create something new every time, something totally new and different every time, and reinvent the wheel every time. And the reality is design is not art in my view, right? There's a big difference. So if you want to be an artist, you can be an artist. That's about creating kind of one-off pieces. And I do that, in my spare time still, because I'm not designing products as much. But when it comes to design, you have to turn a switch and say, I need to focus and guide my creativity and understand that, the most successful portfolio that I've ever seen is when a designer has the ability to throw the sales and the margin on a product, and show, hey, I got 5 years of design experience. Here are my successful products. Here's what I contributed to them, and here's where the sales actually delivered results. So it is finding that balance of, we're all creatives, but it's a business that you're applying that creativity to. So know that it's not art. Know that it's still industrial design. It's called industrial design for a reason. And it's about repeatability and manufacturability, and ultimately about getting great hands in the getting great products in the hands of consumers. So we've had a number at Gregory, we've had a number of great products. I can give you some examples. One time we built some amazing luggage with $100,000 in tooling, right? And it was this beautiful wide handle luggage with all these patents on it, custom wheels, custom chassis, patented items all over it. The luggage was some of the best reviewed luggage we ever had, right? Everyone loved it. People still tell me about it. It was 10 years ago. This is the best piece of luggage I've ever used, but it was way overpriced, because of all the custom work that we did. And there's so many examples of failed products that didn't have a place in the market because of price point, or feature sets, but they're still great products. And, those great products are not successful products, if that makes sense. So I think that's a real challenge. And you have to get in the mindset as a designer of a successful product is a product that sells well for the company that I'm working for. Sometimes there are, of course, vector and halo products, but you're not always going to get to work on those, right? Vector and halo products for us, meaning, alpine products that sell very few units, but service, some of the, most advanced alpine climbing in the world, or backcountry ski packs for us that, are very niche business. We're not a ski company, but, we make some of the best ski packs in the world, but we sell a limited amount of those because it's more for brand image than it is for commercial success. So I think understanding that balance, understanding that it's design and industrial design and not art, understanding that those constraints are there to help you create a commercial product, and understanding when in the process to be open and embrace the constraint box that needs to be put in place. So, for me, those were some things that I learned over the years, and finding that balance is good. And as a manager of that process, and as a participant, it really is not a linear process. Don't expect it to be. There's always timelines, and they look beautiful. The timelines are like ideation, blue sky, product brief, ideation, product development, prototyping, blah blah blah, all the way to commercialization. But it never really is that smooth. You often have to jump back in the process when a new idea is identified and you have the time to implement it, or you decide, hey, this new idea is great, but you have a good management team guiding you and says, this is an awesome idea. Let's start developing this now for the next season rather than for this season. So those type of things happen a lot, in the design world. And, for us, the ideation process is one we, go through. It's fairly typical, like what you'd expect. Gregory runs a hybrid model between prototyping and pattern making in-house. We do have a full-time pattern maker, and we have a prototype lab with a full-time master sample sewer in there. And so we're lucky enough to have that. All companies don't. Oftentimes those resources are located, where your factory is, and they have the pattern makers there on site. So, one of the most important, skill sets to learn is enough cut and sew knowledge about how seams go together and how seams lay. And I could, in person, it'd be easier to walk you through a pack and show you 20 examples of this. But ultimately, striving and having a passion for the cut and sew process helps you with the ability to draw concepts that will work. All right. We have some designers, I'll give you just a real example. We have some product designers that can draw some gorgeous bags, impossible to sew, right? Impossible to produce. And it's not just about designing a good looking bag. It's about designing a bag that, when sewn together, has the right drape and the right body to it, and has the right functionality. Because in a lot of times, people in soft goods will not think about the way the bag lays and drape. They'll just think about the way the bag looks perfectly stuffed out with stuffing and gear in it. So with any soft goods, very important to review them stuffed out and in their photography type format, but also in drape hanging on a hanger in a retail shop. So that's something that a lot of soft goods, even companies, overlook, is they tend to not review. They review these things in one world or the other, and not in both. So with any soft goods, important to load it up with real gear and use it and see how it works and drapes with real gear in it, but also how it's going to look empty on the retail shop floor. And there's lots of examples and packs, products in the graveyard in soft goods because they look gorgeous, stuffed out and perfect in photography. But as soon as you get the bag in your hands and used it and look at it empty, it's not a very usable product. So that's something to always, keep in mind. But once the designer puts concepts down on paper, for us, we go through a couple rounds of ideation, and try to get as finished as we can, on the 2D side of things. And we have a lot of, people with experience that can help comment on that. We'll get our pattern maker involved in the 2D as well to comment on it. If she can, provide some insights into, we can't really do this. There's no way for me to pattern this. And then from there, we'll say, okay, we're fairly locked and loaded on a design concept here, and then it gets passed either to our factory pattern team or to our in-house pattern and prototype team. And we crank out what we call blocks. So we'll crank out block shapes first to just get the general architecture of the bag, and then once that block shape is really refined, and the architecture looks good, then we'll start layering all the features on top of it. That process for us, could mean, 2 prototypes, but it often means, 10 prototypes. Andrew or Chase, what's useful for you guys? I mean, do you want me to walk through depending on the level that you guys are in, and anyone can speak up, but what's the most useful, conversation for me to have with you guys about that part of the process?
So I was going to say, it was really good where you're talking about the patterning, because we put our students through, well, depending on how many they want, they can go through 3 or 4 cut and sew type courses with a patterning specific course. And so they're very familiar kind of with those tools, but are there digital tools that you're using during this whole process? I would assume maybe you're sketching Procreate or still sketching by hand. You've got people maybe in Illustrator. Could you maybe walk through some of those digital tools so those that are kind of interested in this realm know which tools they need to keep practicing a lot?
Yeah.
And are there some of the newer 3D technologies that are coming down the pipeline that you're either looking at or maybe interested in pursuing at some point?
Yeah. So right now, the way we're old school on the patterning side, we actually use AutoCAD.
Okay.
And the reason we do that, we've looked at patterning softwares. There is like a lot of apparel patterning software, and they're getting a little more friendly towards soft goods. And there is some 3D, unpeel the banana type software out there that I see some designers using and playing with. Those things are great. I think those will all get here. I can't tell you which ones to focus on. I can just tell you what we do.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a future in it, but right now what we do is we use Procreate, and a lot of people are now on just iPad Pros, but we do have Cintiq tablets as well, big Cintiqs for the office, and then we use a combination of Photoshop and Illustrator to sketch and layer and put all, look at, in soft goods, there's a lot of layering concepts. So like foam cocktails with like mesh over a foam with a background transparency. And so those can be done a little bit easier, without having all the materials in front of you. Those can be done a little easier in Photoshop. But then Illustrator is a good tool for us for the designers, because they can give us orthos in full scale. And that's helpful for a factory, and that's helpful for a pattern maker as well.
On the skill side, on sketching in particular, I know a lot of the students in this class are probably in the sketching class right now, and some of them probably asking themselves why they're drawing so many boxes and circles and straight lines. Maybe you can speak to where that really pays off when you need to, crank out a bunch of concepts and bags, and maybe the building blocks of learning, those core skills before you jump into designing bags themselves.
Yeah, no, I mean, the hard reality of design, right, is you do need to have the ability to communicate your concepts in 3D on paper. And if you can't do that, you're going to have trouble, right, as a designer. So the fundamentals of sketching are super critical. And I would encourage anyone. I mean, I wish I had put more energy into my sketching ability when I was in school. When I ended up going over to Motorola first for an internship, to work on radios and phones, I was a 1 out of 10. But in 4 months, what the guys at Motorola taught me, and these were guys that were, they could crank out a gorgeous Porsche in 10 minutes right in front of you, and some of the best illustrators I've ever seen in my life. Those guys just drove me to sketch. And so, yeah, sketching is super important, and don't get hung up on trying to copy someone else's sketching style. I knew a guy that would sketch with a Bic pen, and he would do like this, like really rough, wiggly line sketching style. And like, don't be afraid to have your own style. Like, everything doesn't need to look the same. Everyone sees, the IDEOs and like all these gorgeous design sketches, and those are great, but it's okay to have your own style. But yes, I mean, work on those fundamentals, get your sketching down, and also, know what your place is. For me, I moved out of the design space because I'm not the best designer. That's why, and there's other career paths as well, right? And I can talk a little bit about developers and product line managers here for you in those different roles, and the skill sets. But I am, I excel at coming up with ideas, but I have trouble communicating them on paper, right? As a designer, I did. There's much stronger sketchers than me. I can draw, right? I can crank out concepts, but my command of that skill set wasn't as strong as most other people, and I recognized that. And I said, you know what? I need to get into some more design management, and get some experience there. So, or the developer is also a great path, right? So you guys, know a lot about design, and you're learning about design, learning how to sketch, learning that process, and if you're constantly uncomfortable with it and constantly struggling with it, you either push through that and learn and enhance your sketch skills, and you can learn those, or you can also go down the development path and really focus your skill sets on becoming more on the developer side. Still requires drawing skills, still requires the ability to communicate concepts, but it's not as demanding you're the one that always has to come up with the idea, right? Front. That can be that is one of the hard parts about design, is you are the one always coming up with the ideas. And when that's fun for you, that's good. But it can also be challenging for some people. And the developer path is a great path for those people that are creative, and want to be involved in product creation, but they have some other skill sets as well. And the way we think about developers, to talk a little bit about that role, is we think of them as project managers, in the sense that they're the ones that kind of help keep design on track in terms of timeline and making sure the product gets ultimately completed on time with a price target in mind. And then they're the ones that also are responsible for commercialization of the product, which means working with the factory that's going to produce this to make sure that it has the highest chance of success, and making sure that the tooling's done right, inventing some new jigs or manufacturing processes to help execute a certain operation on the product that hasn't existed before. If you're designing something innovative, you might need to work with a factory to do that, because they'll maybe be a little bit more myopic in the way they view how things are produced. And you might have an idea of, hey, instead of molding one of these things at a time, let's mold 12 and look at what the cost of a 12 cavity mold is versus a 1 cavity mold. Simple things like that. And they're also the ones that say, if we, this material's got 48-inch, width goods, right? It's a 48-inch wide roll of fabric. This fabric's 52 inches, and we can now fit 3 back panels on it instead of 2. And so that kind of almost engineering mindset, that's the way I kind of think. That's the way we think about our product developers, is they're kind of the engineers. So when it comes to a technical product, like what Gregory does, that's required. On an apparel type company, The developer is going to be more purely focused on like trims, color, lab dips, and also some of the commercialization elements. But in the more technical categories, your developer is going to be almost like an engineer. And that's the way, at Gregory, we're a little unique. Of course, every company is a little unique, but that's the way we think about our developers, is they act as really the engineers that help make sure, the metals and the alloys that we are using are properly heat treated to make sure that these things can handle the right load. They're the ones that build the machine that, takes our pack and wiggles it and finds wear points, things like that. So the developer will kind of take in our world, the designer will do an initial spec, an Illustrator. Some are better than others. That goes to the pattern maker. And then the pattern maker creates some prototypes, and the spec product spec runs in parallel to the prototyping. And then ultimately, we'll get past the developer pretty early on in that process. After the first prototype, the developer will kind of take the product spec with all the dimensions and the explanations and maybe some exploded views of how something's assembled. And they'll take it to the next level and make sure it has all the color specs, the material specs, make sure everything's in order for the factory to be able to produce it, and for you to have a ultimate finished spec package and color spec package that allows the product to be produced. So getting pretty dialed with those, any company is going to appreciate that you have some familiarity with, spec packages, and you understand what the value is behind those, because it's ultimately how the product's going to get produced, and it's ultimately how you're going to make sure that the quality standards are followed at the factory, and your product gets built the way you want it built. So the end consumer, is happy with it. But that's, in our world, and the developer also does get involved in the costing side of things. So, we happen to be very detailed on that side, where we have a bill of materials, and, we're running through the whole bill of materials to make sure we're not getting overcharged for things, or to find out where the opportunities are to reduce costs. And so much in soft goods is about, I think, is about being clever, in the sense of taking affordable materials and turning them into something that no one else has imagined before. So there's a lot of ways to do this, versus, taking a concept and saying, I want to apply an exotic material, right? So this is one of the really challenging things about soft goods, is it's really easy to go and say, I want to have a titanium frame with a carbon fiber back panel, and I want to have this, blow molded. You can get really out of sync with the commercial reality in soft goods, especially in backpacks, if you try to get too exotic. There's a place for those exotic materials, but oftentimes soft goods is about being really clever with the way you're putting together the cocktail and the way you're building something. And oftentimes, finding materials from other industries that, haven't been applied to soft goods is always in the soft goods gear world, backpacks specifically, finding unique materials is always a challenge, because every one of your competitors is also looking at the same material books you're looking at from the factory, right? That's what happens. You end up getting these, and I'm sure you guys have some of this, or you will have the exposure to some of this, but you get material books of different foams and air meshes and textiles, and every textile factory out there is trying to sell them to all the same people. And so that's always a challenge. Your competitors are all looking at the same set of tools that you are. And so you got to be really clever about the way you put those together, and the way you think about how they can be utilized. So that's a soft goods challenge constantly for us.
With that said, as a designer, how do you push yourself to make product that stands out and is meaningful and impactful, and avoid falling into the same trap of just pushing out more stuff, right? Just,
Yeah.
That's just like everything else that's out there.
Yep. Yeah, no, you have to, one of the most important parts about that product brief is a blank space that's sometimes partially filled out and sometimes not. It can't be filled out until the idea surfaces, but you have to have a unique selling point and a point of differentiation, right? And they really drive this home in school. It gets much harder in the real world when you actually, it really has to be something that resonates with consumers. So I think one of the things that we really still struggle with, that you tend to get, I think more opportunity in school almost, is the research, like the consumer research phase of the product. Oftentimes in the real world, things get so busy and you start cranking and you start doing, what I call is like theoretical, it's kind of like theoretical design, where you have experience, you're confident in your ideas, and you run all the scenarios and testing in your head. That can happen. And there is no way to run that many scenarios in your head in terms of how consumers are going to react. The absolute best way to do it is to take concepts and put them in front of consumers that are unbiased, and get feedback. And one of the most critical strengths to being a good designer is listening, right? If you don't have the ability to listen objectively, and you don't have, if your ego is so strong that you think your idea is the bee's knees and it's the deal and that's the way it's going to be. Design conviction is good, right? Standing up for your idea is good, but it can be a huge pitfall as well. So like anything in life, it's not black or white, right? There's a big gray area there. And I think understanding and recognizing that struggle and finding, being self-aware, is super important. But you got to know how to listen, and you got to know how to check your ego at the door sometimes, on these ideas. I mean, just yesterday, we had a big 2-hour-long debate on the way we were going to apply a feature, creating a new type of backpack. No one's quite done it before, and we want to get it right. And we had a big debate on it, and both myself and my product line manager, right, both had to make total concession and just say, okay, like, you're right, I'm wrong, like, you've presented a case for this. And so like the ability to change your mind and see someone else's side of things, but ultimately really listen to the consumers and not always to your own little box, your own little bubble that you're working in, is super important. I am guilty of it, just like anybody. You have an idea and you get stuck on it, and like that's your idea, and then you build a project around that idea, and you find, and this is what I talked about earlier, where you think you have this great idea and then you're looking for problems that it can solve, right? The best way to do something, in my opinion, is to always make sure you're solving a real problem. Otherwise, you don't have much of a case. You don't have a differentiator to talk about in the marketplace, and you don't have much value to provide. And you're not going to get that aha moment from the consumer when you show them the product. That's what you're looking for, is the smile and the eyes light up and someone's like, that is sick. That's what I need that product. I have to have it. Like, that's how you create a product that draws people in, that makes them want to touch it, feel it, purchase it. And so I think, that's an important thing to understand as a designer. If that answers your question, Chase.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
So yeah, there's it's 9:40. So you guys have any questions? I could talk for 4 or 5 hours. So let's try to hammer some questions out from you guys if you have anything.
If people want to write those into the chat, that's worked in the past. Feel free to write those out. It might take a minute for some to come through, but
yeah, no worries. Yeah, so but that role, and the product line manager, I talked about the developer a little bit more, right? That's the person, the developer's traveling to the factories. The designer will travel to the factories as well, typically, but the developer is definitely going over to the factories, definitely executing from that, prototype creation and managing that process all the way through the commercialization to make sure that the thing's produced. So for us, the developer gets to check out of a project only after multiple successful production runs and it's running smooth, right? And then it's passed over to our, production operations team. The product line manager is really that kind of role that does require some experience. You're not going to come out of school and become a product line manager, likely, but maybe at some very junior level. I guess that could be possible, but that's a whole other career path in itself, and a great one for someone that has a lot of consumer insights, understands how consumers think. Sometimes the product line manager will report to marketing, like product marketing. In our world, that person reports, into myself, but which is kind of both product and marketing, but they're not in the marketing department. But sometimes you'll see product line managers in marketing, as well. But I think that's a good way to think about product line managers, is the bridge between the two.
I've got a quick question for you.
Yep.
So when it comes to gathering that user-based research, how often do the designers get to go out and play with the pro staff, or is it more they're gathering information because most of the time that's also their hobby along with their career? Like how does that work at Gregory?
Yeah.
How often do they send out, or how do they do their research?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times people are spending their own time on the trail and getting out and backpacking and hiking, and they're passionate about the activities that they're designing the product for. When they're not, that's a challenge, and you have to force it. So that's not ideal. But designers will do things for us, like sometimes I'll send designers out to Bed Bath and Beyond and Target, and I'm be like, come back with some new materials that our industry is not using. For example, so sometimes they'll do like material trips like that, where they just go like shopping and they just go spend time looking for materials. And it's important. I think it's very important to do store visits. So store visits are super important, right? You're ultimately trying to design a product. Don't get too hung up or separated in your creativity from what you're ultimately trying to do, which is sell products. So look at the online direct to consumer companies that are successful and how they're messaging product, and what's working for them. But go spend time at REI and Bass Pro, if you're into that side of equipment, and and Cabela's, and listen to people. Watch people shop for a backpack. Watch customers come in. Talk to the shop employee. Those are some of the best ways to do things. That in companies, a lot of times people get too busy. So I would encourage you to do that now in your education, in higher learning on this. And I would encourage you to hold on to that, and understand the retail environment, understanding what makes consumers tick, and what are those trigger points that make them want to buy a product is super important.
So one question here in the chat from Jeremiah: what is your favorite part of your job? What is your least favorite product you've worked on in your career?
My least favorite product?
Oh, your favorite product.
Favorite product.
But you can share your least favorite one you had to work on too. So
my favorite part about the job is when we finally get to see the product built. So in soft goods, what will happen is you'll design a product, you'll build prototypes out of prototype materials. You'll order all the final production materials in all the right colors. For me, my favorite part of the whole process, favorite part of the job, is when we get to see all the products built out of the final colors and materials. And when that all comes together, for a soft goods, like backpacking product, for example, it's a true load carrying product, something over 50 liters that just has so much engineering that's gone into it. And I put it on and I get that aha feeling. For me, like, that's the shit. There's nothing better than that, because there's 400 operations, hand sewn operations, that go into those products. There's 60, different materials. It's a crazy product. And to have watched the last 12 months of our whole team pining over, and sometimes high-fiving, and sometimes battling over every detail to get it right, that's a really fun end result. So that's my favorite part of the job, is seeing the final product for the first time in its, and all of its right colors and materials and textures. That takes a lot of work and energy and time in soft goods, because, you got to go lab dip materials, get the right colors. Then you got to order them. That takes time. So you never see things out of the perfect, color and material and texture out of the gate. It just takes time. My least favorite part is probably, working in spreadsheets, on finance stuff. I do enjoy it. It's kind of where the rubber hits the road on some of the back end business, but working on the P&L, which is, just our profit and loss statements, and creating PowerPoint presentations, probably one of my least favorite parts of the job. But honestly, I've been working for Gregory now for 18 years. I've held 6 or 7 different roles. I've owned some of the company at one point. I've moved office 3 times from different states. It's gone through 6 different owners. I've put on the suit and tie in New York to sell the company with finance firms, and I've, spent weeks on the trail, backpacking, and I'm still involved in a day-to-day level in product creation. But through all that, I can count the days. Swear to God, count the days on 2 hands that I haven't wanted to go to work and do my job. So there is something to be said for, being passionate about what you do. And that's all the old cliches. But if you find yourself not enjoying it, bail, change course. You got plenty of time, and find your area that you like. I got out of my senior thesis. We had to do a thesis at Georgia Tech, and I had this partnership with Motorola to create this handheld wearable device. It was like pretty far ahead of its time, and I was doing all this medical research. I was spending time in hospitals, and I hated it. And I told my professor at the time, I'm like, I'm going to make a backpack for my senior thesis. And he was like, no, you are not. No way, dude. This project's too cool. You have access to Motorola's prototype lab. And I went and talked to him, and I said, I don't like it. Like, I don't care about it. I don't like the medical side of things. I'm just not that into to it. And I love the outdoors. And he was like, all right, go get some, and talking to him years later, after, spending thousands of days overseas, seeing the world, building backpacks, learning the business. He's just like, yeah, man, good call. Like that was the right call. So it's important to follow that intuition where you can.
Is there a favorite product that you had worked on?
Because we're like always evolving and things are getting better every season, it's the answer to that question typically, because we're so passionate about what we do, and all of our, passion and energy goes into the latest stuff we build. So like one of my favorite products that we've ever created is a new product called the Katmai and Kalmia. And they're they're basically, it's a new kind of suspension system with like a patented floating lower back that is a really, really comfortable bag. And I've been on 3 backpacking trips with that in the last 6 months because of COVID. I've had a lot more time. And that product will be, at REI in March, and launching on our website around the same time. But it's I know you can't see it, but it's one of my favorite products that we've ever done. It's built with recycled materials, and it's a really, really pretty amazing product. But other than that, it's probably maybe our Zulu and Jade products are other really fun ones. Those are ventilated backpacks that have a challenging suspension to create. So I don't want to talk for the rest of the time about that, but yeah, those are just some examples.
All right, so I've got one for you. So students are always asking me, how do they break into kind of this backpack market? So if you had any advice for them as far as what they could demonstrate in portfolio, a lot of them are like, well, should every project be a backpack? I'm like, no, they want to see some, breadth to your skills. But any kind of pointers you can give students now that are trying to work their way into the backpack market segment?
I think that I think that you probably, want to show that you understand um, the kind of commercial realities of backpacks. And to do that, try to build or design something that would compete with, like, find some best-selling products out there, right? And try to build something that competes with them. As a project, try to find something in a space. Like, say, take a hydration day pack, or take a ventilated backpack. Take something very specific, and I would say showing a project like that really shows I've built this commercial thing that actually is in the realm of reality and not just total blue sky. Creativity is good. Like, you want to see that creativity, but a project that shows real problems that were identified and the solutions, I think, is super important. And just kind of understanding that the reality of it and being like, these are the best sellers in the space, and show something that can actually compete with, like, an Osprey or a Gregory pack out there. And I think, just one project in your portfolio that's very grounded, and if you have the ability, to pattern some of that stuff, showing that you have a passion for the pattern making side and you have some understanding of that. It's important. We look for people that have a passion for the craft. The backpacking market's not a huge market, right? The technical backpacking market, so you got to recognize that it's not a giant market. So there's not a ton of companies out there that are doing it. There's 10 or 12 companies that you want to go work for. So it is a niche. It's a fun one. But who your audience is for technical backpacks. So that's what I would focus on. And I would focus on, trying to reach out to people like myself, like connect you with someone on our team, or try to get some exposure and time, and learn about it like we're doing today, to show that you get how the process works. Maybe that gives you an edge, but showing a passion for it, showing a passion for cut and sew. It's what you do all day at a company like Gregory. It's all backpacks all the time. So, we look for designers that truly love backpacks and truly love, gear carry equipment, because if not, they're gonna get bored. Yeah.
So kind of on that note, how important is mentorship to you? I know having someone like Wayne Gregory, that's a phenomenal mentor, right? Kind of a legend in the industry. How important is that to you, and how do you build those relationships? How do these students find their own Wayne, right? Maybe they'll never find someone who's that level, but there's plenty of people in the industry, who are looking to get back and at least give advice. Like, how do you value that, and what recommendations do you give to students?
I think being professional but aggressive in your, or ambitious in your outreach. That's something I didn't do a great job of in school, is the outreach side of things, in terms of a little bit of networking, and like try to get to know some people. You don't want to be overbearing, but try to get to know some people in the industry. Go to maybe some of the local events when those start back up, and develop some relationships. Try to get an internship. That's the most valuable thing you can do. And I know, Chase, we're working on how to make that easier to do. And maybe some retail experience isn't a bad thing, even if it's just one shot at it. Like, working the floor at REI, if you love the outdoors and the equipment and that's where you want to be, I mean, go work there part-time. Get some retail experience. I think that's a pretty cool thing to see on a resume of a designer, because it shows, like, I cared enough. I went and worked at this outdoor shop so I could really, understand how consumers are thinking about outdoor product and what their, purchasing decisions and priorities are. And, like, I wanted to learn more. So, I worked at retail, and that's going to be pretty valuable little checkbox. That'd be pretty cool to see on a resume of a designer or a developer or a product line manager, especially a product line manager.
All right. Well, I think we're just about out of time, so we don't want to keep you on Zoom all day.
Cool.
But we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with us and give these students some great advice on how to move forward in the industry. And like I say, look forward to hopefully getting to finally meet you in person. And
yeah, totally. I mean, I know there's a lot of broad stroke stuff. We just kind of rip through a bunch of things, and some stuff will feel like masterly obvious, but you know, if you can take away one thing from a conversation like this, that's important. So, you know, I'm happy to jump back on a call with you guys at any time, and we can dive deep into one topic or just do an hour of Q&A. So I'm here if you need me for that, and you know where to find me.